For today's review, I wanted to talk about Night of the Living Dead, and this is the 1990 version. This is written by George A. Romero, adapted from his 1968 original screenplay, of course, and directed by Tom Savini, so a match made in horror heaven there. I talked about the original film last year, and really, I mean, there's not much more to say about that movie. It's a classic, but this version, I don't think it's talked about too much. Like when it comes to, say, the Dead series and their remakes, the 2004 Dawn of the Dead is infinitely more popular. Like everyone kind of cites it as, you know, one of the best remakes ever. This one, it's hard to really say. Like I feel like in recent years it's just kind of gotten a little bit more, I don't know, ignored. But here's the thing about this movie, at least for me. I have a really hard time kind of deciding, you know, whether it's an inferior version or whether it's better. You know, some remakes, of course, you're like, oh, well, this is nothing compared to the original. Others, you'd be like, yeah, this is a pretty good improvement. This one, honestly, I feel it's like right on par with the original film. I really do. And definitely a large part of that has to do with, okay, the original film is a classic, it's great, but in making this version, it's a color version, has improved effects, but one of the things I liked best about that original film was kind of the drama between the people, and kind of like just this scenario of kind of putting yourself in the place of the characters. Like, if I were stuck in this farmhouse, and if there are zombies, what would I do? How would I react? Whose side would I take? And I think they really enhance those scenes quite a bit, like the arguments between Ben and Mr. Cooper. I think it's done in a much better way, in a more extended type of way, in a way that raises the tension quite a bit more. Which I guess maybe they just didn't really have time for. You know, extremely lower budget movie. They just kind of have to keep going. So with Romero's revision of his own screenplay here, I think there's a lot more to that tension and a lot more to that drama, which I love. And definitely it takes a lot of things from the original and it kind of switches them up a little bit. Like, this is a movie that's, if you know the original film inside out, it has a lot of like little tricks for you. Like right from the very first scene, I'll give you the most obvious example here. Beginning of the movie, of course, it starts out almost exactly the same. We have Barbara and her brother going to visit their mother in the cemetery, and he sees off in the distance, you know, this strange old man kind of stumbling, and he's like, "Oh, they're coming to get you, Barbara." And you know, in the original, it's actually a zombie, but in here, it's just kind of like this confused old man. He looks like he has like a you know, a gash on his head. Maybe he fell, and whatever. He's like, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Then he walks away. Then boom, a zombie comes, and that's the real zombie. That doesn't look like an old man. It looks like a real fucking disgusting flesh-eating zombie with really great makeup and things like that. So there's so many different twists on the original story, and a lot of them I feel partly done for novelty's sake, but in part done for improvement. Like the Barbara character in general, inarguably a better character in this version. I mean, she's kind of a more take charge kind of character. She's played by Patricia Tallman, who's very good. She's like has like kind of vibes of like Jamie Lee Curtis a little bit. She kind of looks like her, kind of like has that same kind of attitude when she has to kind of talk tough, instead of being like the complete traumatized, catatonic character that she was in the original film. She really steps up, and we feel that you know, she's the voice of reason between everything, because we have the arguing between Ben and Mr. Cooper, which is like the staple of the first movie, but we always kind of felt that Ben ultimately became the main character, which he is here, but it's sort of more of a balance between Barbara and Ben, which I think works a lot better, because we meet Barbara at first, and you know, to see her just kind of fade out into the movie in the original, it's like unsettling in a good way, but in the same way we like kind of wish we could have got a little bit more from this character, and that's what we get from this version, which I really like. And obviously whether it was intended or not in the original film, the whole social satire thing, or kind of social commentary, I guess you should put it. Probably not as existent here, but there's still some stuff that you can kind of take a look at, because I'd say maybe as opposed to like racial kind of stuff, I think more kind of class, because we look at, say, Ben, who's, by the way, Tony Todd, brilliant in this movie. I mean, he's great. I thought he's, Mr. fucking Candyman, perfect for this role. Just great. And we get a sense from him that he's kind of wearing sort of like middle class kind of clothes. Looks like maybe a regular 9 to 5 job, maybe even kind of like a lower class. But then we see, in contrast to that, Mr. Cooper, who, whatever was going on, he's like wearing like the tux, and he has like the bow tie untied, just kind of like, chilling out and like sweating, and balding, of course. And so he's like, looks like a much higher class kind of dude. And so maybe there's this kind of thing where, okay, so the higher class guy wants to go downstairs, and the lower class guy wants to go upstairs. So there's an upstairs, downstairs thing. I don't know, whatever you can take from that. But you always kind of wonder about these characters, like, what their story is. Like, I don't think they ever mention where the Coopers were. Like, they're all dressed up going somewhere, right? So I wonder where they were. Maybe we could see a prequel, like Hanging with Mr. Cooper, about like whatever event they were going to before all this shit happened. Because, like, I mean, we do tend to wonder about these things, because I would say more than any other kind of zombie movies, we know these characters so well at this point. They're kind of like destined to repeat the same night over and over and over again, because we keep on watching the movie. So I don't know, we tend to think about these things. We tend to think about their lives and what they were before, because this is the type of movie where they don't talk about that, which is one of the good things about the movie in general, where they're just focused on the situation, which I like. There's no kind of scene where it's like, yeah, I used to, I used to do stuff for like the army and stuff, I was a black ops operative, whatever. I don't know, whatever. They don't have like their moment where they talk about their backstory and stuff like that. They simply talk about the night and the situation ahead of them, and I think that makes the movie all the stronger for it. And with something like a film from Tom Savini, you'd immediately kind of think, all right, this is going to be a gore fest, man. There's going to be crazy effects all over the place. There's going to be blood splattering everywhere. No, which is good, I think, because it does focus on the drama. I'll tell you for sure. There's good makeup effects. There's good zombie effects. I would say almost arguably some of the most definitive styles of zombies that we've seen. And there's some cool stuff. Like, there's a severed hand that kind of falls from the rail, and you see some of the rotting corpses and stuff like that, and that's all really good. And we see kind of the gunshots. There's a really great scene where, there's, of course, aside from the Coopers, Ben and Barbara, there's a young couple, and the girl's kind of freaking out. She's like, "You killed Mr. So-and-so," or whatever. She's like, Barbara's like, "Don't you know what's going on here?" She's taking the rifle, and a zombie kind of walks in, shoots him in the chest. "Is he dead?" Shoots him in the chest again. "Is he dead?" Shoots him in the gut. "Is he dead?" A great scene. Really kind of showing how Barbara is a completely different character. She's the Barbara of the 90s, basically. And I think that's good. And it has a little bit more to the ending, too, where there's a little bit of the commentary, too. Barbara says, okay, spoilers, by the way, Barbara ends up surviving the night, which I think is good. And, with all the kind of additional kind of stuff where we see, like the rednecks getting the zombies and stuff. She says something like, "We're them and they're us," or something like that. I don't know. But I think a lot of good stuff happens towards the ending. I honestly, I can't remember if this was in the original film, but in the ending, it was such, like, the grandest of grand ironies when Ben kind of finds himself, last man standing, finally has to go into the cellar, and he was so hesitant to do throughout the whole movie. And he finds the gas pump, which they're looking for the gas pump key the whole movie, and he finds it there, and he starts laughing to himself. I honestly can't remember if that was in the original, but if it wasn't, I mean, that's just a master stroke on this story, because that's like the ultimate irony. If maybe they could have worked together a little bit more instead of arguing, butting heads, you know, so kind of sad. And of course, he succumbs to the night, and he becomes a zombie himself, instead of kind of this tragic ending that we see in the original, where he's just kind of he survives the day, and he comes out and he's like, hey, what's going on? Boom, he gets shot. In this version, you know, because Barbara had run to get help, she comes back, she finds him to be a zombie, kabloom, headshot. I think there's a kind of justice to the fact that it was Barbara that, you know, kind of laid him to peace, I would say. And the best part, the stand up and cheer part, we find out Mr. Cooper's alive, and he comes down from the attic. He's like, Barbara, you came back. Kablam, headshot. All right, fuck you, Mr. Cooper. But again, I think it does a lot of good stuff with the ending, and I don't know, I think this and the original, they're neck and neck for me. I think they really are both brilliant zombie films, definitive zombie films, with definitive zombie effects, and the definitive drama that comes from the situation to make it more real feeling, to put you in the place of the character, to say, what would I do if I were in this position? So I always find that, you know, an interesting thing to think about. So I love the movie. Definitely deserves a lot more praise. And I'll say it's a better remake of Night of the Living Dead than Dawn of the Dead is a remake of Dawn of the Dead, if that makes sense. But one of my favorite remakes, one of my favorite zombie movies, so check it out if you haven't already. That's my review. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit Derek237.com. Stay tuned for more horror movie reviews coming, and until next time, stay scared, and I'll see you later.